Reading, multiple choice, single answer, guided practice. Let's begin. Your first question. As always, you may pause the video while you try to attempt the question. For multiple choice, single answers, I would suggest you spend a minute or 2 minutes. This is, of course, practice. So even if you need to spend a bit more than that, that is fine. And once you have done the question, then you can come back and resume the video. The correct answer is predatory fish are now mostly found in marine reserves. How do we go about multiple choice single answers? We start by reading the question. So the question here is, which of the following statements about predatory fish are not true? The keyword here, predatory fish, and statements about predatory fish. And we have to find the one statement that is not true. So that means that out of these 5 options, 4 are correct, and they are correct as per the information that is given in the text, and one option is wrong. And that is the one option that we need to select, because in our question, we've been asked to find the one that is not true. Next, now we know what we are looking for, predatory fish, that's the focus. Now we will read the text. And basically, we first skim the text to understand the theme and the structure. Predatory fish are fish that prey. Some examples: levels are estimated to be 10, large at extinction, creation, switch between different types of prey, may become a pest, sharks and tunas form a part of human diet, quantities of mercury, important to consider in managing fisheries. So as you see, I've just skimmed through. I read a little bit from each paragraph to get an idea what that paragraph is about. So now I understand the structure. The first paragraph, it tells me what predatory fish is. After that, it talks about where they are found, their levels, the risk of extinction. After that, the types of prey. The fourth paragraph then is how they are a part of the human diet. And finally, something about factors to consider while managing fisheries, etc. Now, when I know how this information is structured, I can go back to the options, and now I'll do some scanning for specific information so that I can validate the options one by one. The first option, large predatory fish in the oceans are estimated to be about 10% of their pre-industrial levels. Now I know that in the second paragraph, they mentioned the level of predatory fish where they are found, etc. And I can also see that this is where 10% is mentioned. And when I read the sentence, that levels of large predatory fish in the global oceans were estimated to be about 10% of their pre-industrial levels. So it's the same meaning as this option. So that it means this option is correct. So that's why I will not select it. Next, large predatory fish face a big risk of extinction. And this was again an information contained in this paragraph. And when I again look for extinction or words related to that, I can see here the statement, large predatory fish are most at risk of extinction. So that means this option is also true. So not my option, and not the option that I'll select. Now let's look at the third option. Predatory fish change their types of prey depending upon various factors. Now in this paragraph, we know they're talking of prey, so I'll look at prey. And it says predatory fish switch between types of prey. So switching between types of prey in response to variations is the same as changing the types of prey depending upon various factors. So changing or switching is the same thing. That means this option is correct. Now the fourth, this option is correct means this statement is true. And that's why I will not select this option, because I have to select the one that is not true. Now the fourth, predatory fish consumed by humans can have high levels of mercury in it. Now I know in this paragraph is about diet, so I go there, look for humans, human diet, any words related to that. So human diet or human consumption, the same thing, they're related. And also says that they tend to concentrate significant quantities of mercury in their bodies. So that means the statement is true, but I have to select not true. So that leaves me the last option. And when I've eliminated all the 4 options, I know that this option will be correct, but still I want to validate it. So predatory fish are now mostly found in marine reserves. I know this paragraph was about where the fish are, and there's also a mention of marine reserves. This sentence, creation of marine reserves has been found to restore populations of large predatory fish. It means that the population has been restored with the help of marine reserves. Restoring a population is something you do to fight extinction as a response to extinction. But it does not say that that is where the predatory fish are mostly found nowadays. The first line still talks about global oceans, etc. And maybe the global oceans, though it is just about 10% of pre-industrial levels, but probably they still contain most predatory fish in the world and not just the marine reserves. In other words, nowhere in the passage, in this text, there's a clear indication of where predatory fish are mostly found. So that means we can't select this option. This statement is not true based on the information that's contained here. And that's why I will select it as an option, because I have to select the option that is not true. So the key takeaway from this question is, first, you really need to understand the option. A lot of people get confused between true, not true, because not true is actually the correct option. So there can be a bit of a confusion there. Try not to get confused like that. And then, and don't just do keyword matches. For example, somebody sees marine reserves here, and then they try to match it directly with marine reserves. They'll say this is correct. But when you look at the whole sentence, when you read the whole sentence, these are different things. So don't select options just based on keyword matches. You need to properly understand the sentence in which those keywords, those words appear. All right, let's go to the next question. Here is the next question for you. The correct option is last, classical. We'll again go back to our steps. The first step, read the question. Which of the following is not a music genre that has emerged in America? So it tells me that the passage is going to be about music in America, and specifically the types of music that have emerged in America. And from the question, then I can say that what are these options about? These options are music genres, and I have to find the one which has not emerged in America, which has not originated in America. Now I read the text, I skim the text. Children are a part of two social categories. Music is an innate part of our existence. So I just read that. And the first paragraph is just about music and the importance of music in human life. The next paragraph, music making, artistic endeavors, I just skim through. I'm not going to read the full sentences. In the US, unique genres of music, the melting pot that is America has yielded brand new genres such as big band, rock and roll, etc. All right. And the second paragraph, that contains information about music in America and the genres that have originated, that have emerged in America. So now I know where to focus. So I go to the next part, that is scanning this particular part to validate the options. The first option, big band, yeah, it's there. And it's part of the statement that says America has yielded brand new genres such as big band's there, jazz is there, blues is there, rock and roll is there. And the statement has yielded brand new genres means has produced or has given birth to brand new genres, which is the same as saying genres that have emerged in America. But I can't see any reference to classical. That means based on the text, it's not something that has emerged in America. So I will select that option. Now you see emerged, here you have the word emerged, but here when you see has yielded brand new genres. So when you are looking for the information, don't always look only for keywords. Try to look for words which might have similar meaning. Okay. That's one thing to remember. The other important point which this question highlights is the last option. For example, let's say some of you read an article somewhere or a book somewhere or saw a documentary somewhere that says that told you that classical music emerged in America. Now, when you look at these options, you will get confused. You'll think classical also emerged in America. But you don't have to use outside knowledge. You have to answer strictly based upon what is there in the text. And according to the text, these are the genres that originated in America. Classical did not. So that's something very useful to keep in mind. Focus only on the information in text in a way that the text that's given, that is the world that you know. And you have to answer based simply on that. Okay, let's go to the next question now. The correct option here is option number 3. Mega knitting uses needles with hooks carved into the ends. The question is, because we start with the question is, how is mega knitting different from conventional knitting? So now you can guess that the text, it's going to be about mega knitting. And what you have to focus on, the differences between mega knitting and conventional knitting. And based upon the question, then you can also predict what the options are. The options sort of are supposed to represent some differences between conventional knitting and mega knitting. And you have to pick the one which is correct. So one option is a correct difference between mega knitting and conventional knitting, and the rest of them, they are not correct, and you need to validate that against the text. So now As always, go back to the text, skim. You'll understand this is about mega knitting. You'll understand that then the structure, that in the second paragraph is about differences, comparison with conventional knitting. And in the third paragraph, it's more about more information about mega knitting, the stitches, the hooks, and the different things involved in it. And the last line or the last paragraph is about the kind of fabric that mega knitting produces. Now, let's look at the first option. Mega knitting uses knitting needles less than half an inch in diameter. Now, this was an information which is right there in the first paragraph because that told me what mega knitting is. And yes, it mentions the diameter of needles, but there it says that the needles are greater than or equal to half an inch. And here it says they're less than half an inch. But more than that, it's not a comparison with conventional needles. It's just a statement about mega knitting. It's not a comparison with conventional knitting. So that's why this is not the right option for us. Next one, mega knitting emphasizes on a different set of stitches and techniques. The second paragraph, where it is comparison with conventional knitting, it however says uses the same stitches and techniques in conventional knitting. So this is opposite actually. So that's why that is also not a correct option. The third option, mega knitting uses needles with hooks carved into the ends. Now I can see the hooks carved and the ends that find a mention in the first sentence of second paragraph again. So mega knitting uses the same stitches and techniques as conventional knitting, except that hooks are carved into the ends of needles. So except means everything else is same except for this thing. That means this thing is the difference. And that's why it's a correct option. But as I have said earlier, we are also going to validate the other options. So the fourth option, mega knitting produces more intricate and complex designs. So it says there's something about that, but not in the sense of a comparison with conventional knitting. Mega knitting produces less chunky fabric. The last line, it says mega knitting produces a chunky fabric, but nothing about whether it is less or more, and certainly nothing about comparison with conventional knitting. So this question, again, it highlights a few interesting points. You'll find in many questions confusing options like this, which might contain some correct information, which is even might seem correct as per the text, but then it's not related to the question. Because the question here, there were some statements which are correct about mega knitting, but there is no comparison. They're not in the context of a comparison with conventional knitting. So many students, they will think, yeah, this statement is correct, and they just select it. But you need to understand the overall context of the question and limit your answers based upon that. So here, whatever you select, it has to be as a comparison with conventional knitting. So keep that in mind as we go to the next question now. Question number 4. This is the correct option. Writers should consider using all senses, including visual observation. The question is, what does the author feel about visual observation? So, based upon this question, what can you guess? First, I can guess that the text is going to be about observation or visual observation. And I have to tell which of the following statements. The statements, they're supposed to represent different opinions or statements about visual observation. And I have to select the one which I think author agrees with or author feels the same way about. So that means I need to look for information in the text and then match it with one of these options that correctly represents how author feels about visual observation. Now we start looking at the text, how to properly use and conduct observations, having strong observation skills, many exercises. Then in the next paragraph, when students think about observation, go directly to idea of visual observation. However, it's important to consider value of other senses, etc., etc. How is the sentence structured? Now, I can say that in the first paragraph is a general statement about observation. The second is about the role of observation. There's a mention of visual observation and what should be used along with some examples. So, because I'm focused on visual observation, so I know second paragraph is the one where I will have the information that I need. So let's look at the first option. Writers should depend mainly on visual observation. Now, some of you who are in a hurry will read just the first sentence. They will say many will go directly to the idea of visual observation, right? Writers should depend mainly on visual observation. Now, this is a statement that's made here, but it doesn't mean, the author doesn't say that if he agrees or whether it is correct or not. We need to find that because that's the purpose That's what we are asked to do in the question. And just because many students go directly to the idea of visual observation does not mean that the author thinks it's the right thing to do. So don't select the first option. Second, writers should depend on other senses more than the visual observation. Now, I know in this, however, there's a sentence where the author talks about other senses. And it says it is important to consider the value of other senses. Again, the author acknowledges that other senses are important, but he doesn't clearly say that writers should depend on other senses more than the visual observation. So he's not comparing, he's not telling which one is more important. The third sentence, writers should consider using all senses, including visual observation. Yeah, that I can say is correct because it says here, when trying to convey an experience to someone who is outside, it's important to consider the value of other senses. So that means consider other senses as well, but also consider visual observation. So this seems to be correct, what the author thinks. Before we submit, let's look at the final option. Writers should use different senses for different purposes. I think that's not really mentioned here, and that's certainly not mentioned in the context of visual observation. So the only information about visual observation is limited to these 3-4 sentences. And those tell us that first it says it's not surprising that people think that observation is visual observation. And then he says, however, it's important to consider the value of other senses. So option 3 is the correct option. This was a good session. It highlighted a lot of common mistakes that people make when they don't consider all options. Sometimes they try to use the knowledge that they have outside the text. So these exercises, they've also taught us that we need to focus only on the information in the text. We need to decide in the context of the question only. So there's information in an option which might be correct as per the text, but it doesn't represent, it's not related to the question. Okay, so you have to look at all these factors when you pick an option. And when you follow the steps, that's why the steps are there. They will guide you in a systematic manner. As you do more practice, you will become confident and you'll find that you are judging your answers based upon all these parameters. It might take you 3 minutes or 4 minutes when the first time you start thinking this way, but after a while, it will just become a habit and you'll find that you can answer these questions in a minute or just under 2 minutes.